There was a first-year school teacher who had a remarkable experience in her very first year of teaching a group of students. Now you might wonder, what does a group of students and a school teacher have to do with the brain and a world without walls? Well, quite a lot actually. This story came across my desk just a little while ago, and I wanted to share it with you. It is a remarkable story. It's a brain story, and more than any other story I've ever encountered, it illuminates a fascinating light on how your brain actually engages with the environment. So, let me ask you a question. We're here to talk about brain without walls and a world without walls. Well, you can't have a world without walls without first addressing the walls that most people build up in their brains over a period of time. So how many people here would like to have a brain that works better immediately, but also ages beautifully for the rest of your life, and also allows you to tackle the walls that most people's brains have built up, so that you'll be able to go about the business of creating a world without walls? Then it starts with something very profound, and it has to happen immediately. I want you to look at the person beside you. Point at that person, keep a straight face, and say, "You're a genius." All right, now look. I'm wondering what part of keep a straight face you didn't understand. Now, I was watching you when I said turn to the person beside you and point at that person and say you were a genius. I saw consistently some variation of you looked at your partner and said you're a genius, and then I heard, "Ah." And you were laughing at each other. So I'd like to make two quick observations about it. Number one, you laughed. That part was good. Humor is a huge part of a brain wellness program. It would be hard to imagine anything that pulls walls down faster in your brain and between people, between cultures, than laughter and humor. So you laughed at each other, that was good. That's a topic we'll probably explore on another occasion. What I want to do today is talk about why you laughed. You looked at your partner, pointed to that person and said you were a genius, and then you laughed, and that really brings us back to this story. So let me just put my brain here for a moment, and back to our story. My job is to read this story. Your job is to listen to this story, not in the context that it takes place, but rather in the context of your life in its totality. I want you to think about the walls that people's brains typically build up. Where do they come from? How do we go about noticing them? How do we break them down? And beyond that, how can we then use this to start to create a world without walls? There was a first-year school teacher who fell in love with teaching during her first year in the classroom. Now, because the school principal had not been by to evaluate her teaching skills, she assumed that she would not have a job at the following year. So at the end of the year, she took her materials back to the office and she prepared to say goodbye. The school principal saw her, brightened up and said, "Well, we've enjoyed having you here this year, and we really look forward to having you come back and teach with us again next year." The first-year teacher looked surprised and said, "But I haven't received a contract to teach next year, so I just assumed that you all thought I'd done a really poor job and that you didn't want me back." The principal said, "No, we really want you back. Your students have scored higher on their achievement test than any students in the history of this school ever. Some of the top results we've ever seen in this state." The first-year teacher looked surprised and said, "But it's easy to teach when you had such a great group of kids as I had. They were sharp, bright, motivated, interested, and all of them had IQs of 150, 152, 153. In fact, most of them were higher." The school principal looked puzzled and asked her how she knew her students had such high IQ scores. And she mentioned the many materials that she had been given on that first day of school, which included a single sheet of paper with her students' names and IQ scores on it. The principal smiled at her and said, "Those were their locker numbers." You laugh, and fair enough. But number one, that's a true story. And number two, that story illuminates a fascinating light on how your brain actually engages with the environment, how your brain builds up walls, and how your brain can go about the process of dismantling walls. The little article, by the way, finishes, "Because she thought the students had such high IQ scores, she treated them all year as if they did. Her attitude was one of high expectations. She believed in her students. She knew they could accomplish the work. When the students complained, she ignored it. When they grumbled, she piled the work on. And it finishes with these words. Her experience underscores the important fact that brain state is always more important than circumstances. Brain state is always more important than circumstances. I'd like everybody, take your finger like this, put it in the air as high as you can. Plant it on the side of your head, turn to the person beside you and say, this is interesting. What I find interesting is that you actually do this stuff. It's remarkable. So, embedded in this story are 3 principles that as a group I would like us to extract. And it really leads us back to why when you looked at your partner and pointed at that person and said you're a genius, it really points back to why you laughed. You know, what I've discovered is you show me a successful person in any area of life. Pick any area of life, and I will show you a brain that has become good at seeing patterns. You show me somebody who's struggling in any area, and I will almost certainly show you a brain that has a hard time seeing patterns. This story contains within it a powerful pattern. Good brain function is the result of a pattern. Leadership is the result of a pattern. Learning is the result of a pattern. Building a world without walls will be the result of a pattern. You know, sometimes elephants fall out of the sky and land on your car. I mean, why my car? Why not yours? Stuff happens randomly, but very, very rarely, almost everything is part of a pattern. So I'd like you to come with me as we take this story and extract 3 principles from it. Please close your eyes. You will know your eyes are closed if you can't see anything. A couple of confused looking geniuses in the audience. All right, close your eyes, and I'd like you to think of a horse. Think of a horse, all right? Eyes open. How many of you saw a horse, some kind of a 4-legged animal? All right, so I said think of a horse, and you saw an image of a horse. Now that takes place right at the back of the brain. There's a structure back here, this little green patch back here. What's that called? It's called the occipital lobe. Metaphorically, what do we call that? The mind's eye. Now, the mind's eye really does exist. This is where the big picture screen of your brain takes place. When I said think of a horse, you saw of an image of an animal. Is that correct? Yes or yes? You didn't see the letters H-O-R-S-E floating nowhere in space. So maybe for the first time in your life, you just discovered that your brain thinks in pictures, not words. This is why you will never walk down the street. You'll never walk down the street and go up to somebody and go, you know, I remember your name, but your face escapes me. Probably not. You always remember the face because it is you remember the name because it is very, very powerful. Keep in mind that your brain thinks in pictures, not words. Principle number 2. You know, it's interesting, just a moment ago, we had a gust of wind, and that piece of cardboard, just as I was speaking, flew off the little podium, and it just about hit you, and everybody quickly turned and looked. Why? Because one of the greatest discoveries about your brain in the last 400 years is this. 85% of the neural messaging in your brain is dedicated to survival. So what does that mean? It means the number 1 job of the brain is to keep you alive. Principle number 2, most of your neural messaging, so when suddenly that moved, suddenly everybody looked. Why? Because A, it could be a saber-toothed tiger. B, it could be the pizza delivery guy. One is a threat, one is an opportunity, both of which are critical for survival. So the brain thinks in, and the number 1 job of the brain is to keep you alive. Now this brings us to the 3rd. How does your brain actually work? Well, the number 1 job of the brain is to keep you alive. So what does that mean? It means that your brain is an information-seeking structure. Your brain is taking information 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. It never takes a break. This is not a union job. Even when you sleep. This is why when somebody walks in at 3 in the morning and flips on the light, you'll wake up. Because even though you're sleeping, your brain is engaging with the environment. So your brain takes information and you hear things, you see things, you smell things, you touch things, you experience things by intuition. Now, when your brain takes information in, what's the first thing your brain does? Now be careful, because this is an absolute. The first thing your brain does is it looks to see what's already stored in your brain. It looks to see what memories you have already physically placed in your brain and any emotion that is attached to those memories, and it tries to make a connection. Now, if the brain can make a connection, learning will take place. If the brain can't make a connection, probably the information will just keep on going and you won't notice it. Now, how many of you would agree that learning is an important part of dismantling walls? Of course you would. That's why you're here. I think this is the best definition of learning we will ever hear in our lives. Learning is connecting new information to what you already know. That's what learning is. Learning is connecting new information to what you already know. So, back to our story. Let's pull it all together. This is unbelievable. I've lost my piece of paper. I'll just, never mind. This is unbelievable. They've given me all the genius kids. 150, 153, 165. What am I going to do? Now, in that moment, when that first-year school teacher, fresh out of university, when she got confused and thought that the students' locker numbers were the IQ scores, what happened? The picture in her brain changed. And the brain thinks in pictures. The picture in her brain changed of who? Her students. And then what happened? Her behavior changed. Towards who? The students. And then what happened? The picture in their brains changed. And then what happened? Their behavior changed. And then what happened? The results went through the roof. Now here's my question. How many of you think that those results would have happened had that funny little accident not happened? Probably not. Very, very unlikely. Here's an even better question. Did it matter that the information was wrong? She was looking at locker numbers. Did it matter that the information was wrong? No. What mattered? The picture in her brain, and learning is connecting new information to what you already know. The brain thinks in. The number one job of the brain is to keep you. And so what happens is, over time, we have this comfortable image of our brains that gets scaffolded up over a period of time. And it creates a picture of who we are, what's important. And the number one job of the brain is to keep you alive. So what does that mean? It means that one of our major default settings is our level of comfort. So we get up in the morning with our sleepy old faces and look in the mirror and go, yeah, that's me. But that's not you. There's more talent, ability, and potential than we ever previously thought possible. Remember, learning is connecting new information to what you already know. So you are a genius. This brain of yours has 100 billion brain cells. 25,000 brain cells can fit on the head of a pin without touching each other. You literally are a genius. By the way, quick, everybody name a genius. The first genius that comes to mind is? Most people will say Albert Einstein. And Albert Einstein was good at math. So the picture we often have in our brain, genius equals Albert Einstein equals math equals me not being good at math equals me being not a genius. Thank you very much. Mother Teresa was a genius extraordinaire. Not so good at math. So what does it mean to be a genius? I would like to put this out as our working definition at our conference here at the Great Wall. William James, the very first psychologist, said, genius is the art of non-habitual thinking. If we're going to take down walls, we have to first tackle the walls in our brain. We have to notice them. We have to start to pull them down. Learning is connecting new information to what you already know. Here's what I've come to believe. Most people I meet around the world are guilty of drastically underestimating their brains. Your brain is much better than you think. Look at the person beside you, point at that person and say, you're still a genius. Learning is connecting new information to what you already know. So what does that mean? It means between stimulus and response, there is a gap. Stuff happens in the gap. Leadership lives in the gap. Pictures are created in the gap. In the gap is where you get to challenge the pictures in your brain of itself and what has been built up over the years. In order to notice a gap, what would you have to be? You would have to be awake. You laugh. But I want you to pay attention to your attention today. What you're going to discover is you're hardly ever here. We spend most of our time futurizing and pasteurizing, and yet walls are pulled down in real time in the gap. Look at your partner, the person beside you, one last time. Give them one thumb up and a big smile and say, "Hey, genius, wake up."
Wake up. Wake up. Wake up.
Thank you very much. It's been a privilege to be here.